So this hand starts off very deep stack. We both have just about $3,000 in front of us. Under the gun, +1 limps. And I look down and I see ace of hearts, jack of spades, ace jack offsuit. I decide to ISO raise up to 30. Everybody folds and under the gun +1 comes along. We see a flop of king of spades, queen of diamonds, jack of diamonds. And this is where the hand starts to get a little bit interesting. Under the gun +1 decides to lead out for about a pot size bet here. The reason why I say that's interesting is it's just very hard for him to have very many strong hands on this board. If he had a hand like jacks or queens or kings, he would have raised pre-flop. If he had ace 10 off or ace 10 suited, I think he probably raises both of those hands before the flop as well. So really like his strongest hand here is going to be maybe like a queen jack if he doesn't raise that. Maybe a pair plus a straight draw, and then he maybe has some 9-10 suited or maybe even 9-10 offsuit. I'm not really sure. But once I see him lead out on this board, I sort of start thinking to myself that like I have all of these very strong hands here. I have kings, I have queens, I have jacks, I have ace 10, I have king queen. I have some 9-10. I have all of the strong hands on this board. So I just don't think that his range is going to be able to stand a ton of pressure. So I decide to just bump it up on a flop here with ace jack, essentially beginning to turn ace jack into a bluff on the flop already, which kind of sounds a little bit crazy, but I think this deep stacked on a board like this that just favors us so much, I think we're actually just kind of had a green light to just go completely bonkers and just start bombing here. So we do end up raising the flop up to 225, and the villain in this hand rather quickly just calls and comes along. The turn is the 7 of hearts, a complete brick, doesn't change anything at all. So all of the things I described on the flop just carry over onto the turn here. So when he checks to us, we are going to keep bombing with ace jack. We're just turning our jack into a bluff. We do have a gut shot. The ace provides us like a little bit of backup equity, which is always nice to have when you're bluffing. And we just go for a fairly large bet here, really just trying to apply a ton of pressure to a range that I've already deemed is quite capped and going to have a really hard time defending. So I think we go pretty big. I think we go $450 here. Yeah, $450. 450 on the turn, which villain thinks for a short while and then calls. So we're headed to a river. At this point, I'm starting to get a little nervous. Like, I know that he can't have very many strong hands, but he is being quite sticky. There is no chance that ace jack is ahead at this point in the hand. So honestly, heading into the river, I'm just really rooting for an offsuit 10. What we see on the other hand, though, is a deuce of diamonds, which is a pretty interesting card. It completes the front door flush draw. And outside of that, really doesn't change a lot. So one thing to note about the deuce of diamonds coming in, if we were bluffing with a diamond draw on the flop and on the turn, all of our bluffs just became flushes. So this card actually really improves our range quite a bit. And at the same time, villain does make some flushes, but he doesn't make a ton. I'm not sure how many flush draws donk flop for pot. I think maybe flush draws prefer like a check raise type line, but I could be wrong here and I could just be reading way too much into it. Also, villain's check on the river was a little bit quick. And I just think like, had he completed a flush, I think he would have thought about it just slightly more. But I could be reading into that way too much as well. Pretty easy for me just to get owned with some live tells here. Or misreading some live tells here. Okay, so this is where, okay, so at this point, I know ace jack is no good. I for sure don't have the best hand. And staying consistent with what I just said, a lot of our bluffs have improved on this river. So really our range is doing very well. I think we get to play this river quite aggressively. And in reality, if we were value betting a hand like kings or king queen or jacks or queens, our hand is definitely still strong enough to value bet here on the river. And if we were bluffing with a flush draw and the flush came in, our hand is definitely now strong enough to value bet on the river. So we want to be playing very aggressively and doing a lot of value betting on this river. The size I should be using, I'm not entirely sure. I think actually I should be probably betting somewhere along the lines of like 3/4 pot. I think 3/4 pot is like, would allow me to, I think a 3/4 pot sizing would allow me to continue to bet like hands maybe as weak as king queen, but certainly any set any straight, and any flush can all value at 3/4 pot. So I think that's probably the correct size to use here. Considering that I am bluffing, I sort of just wanted to apply maximum pressure, and I just decided to jam, rip it in for an overbet, $2,100 going in the middle as a bluff here with a jack and an ace, no diamond blocker, which is a little bit sketchy. So villain does not snap call, which is great. If he made a flush, he just snap calls, and we just get really embarrassed and show our hand and lose quite a bit of money and dignity. So we're glad he doesn't snap call. One thing worth noting is immediately after we put the money out, villain says almost under his breath, he says, it's a bluff bet or something along those lines. So that kind of gets my attention, and I'm thinking, oh no, even though I know he cannot have super strong hands here, there's potential he just gets sticky and he heroes us down, and he hero calls us, and we have to pay the man the fucking money. So all that being said, he's in the tank. He's not in the tank too long before he announces fold, and I sort of breathe a sigh of relief, and I collect a decent pot here.
Give me the loot! Give me the